Hi, everybody, and welcome to Leonardo's first ever Digital Marketing Summit for Hoteliers. My name is Darlene Rondo, and I'm the Vice President Best Practices for Leonardo's Online Merchandising Group, and I'll be your host for today's very special event. Welcome to everyone around the globe, and I know that you guys are coming in from all over the world because you're sending in your questions and your hellos, so thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're excited to be hosting this event for you today, and I hope that you really find value in the content that we're going to be sharing from our guest speakers on the evolving travel shopping journey. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. First, this is close to a 3-hour event, and we're going to be recording the entire thing. If you need to drop off for any reason, you'll be able to watch each presentation on demand after our summit concludes. And we're also going to be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to the recording that you can listen to again or share with your colleagues. You also have a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel, and so please send in your questions as we move through the event today. And we have 2 live Q&A segments that we're going to tee up. One is going to happen at 12:20 Eastern Standard Time, and the second one will happen at 1:35 Eastern Standard Time. We're also going to be tweeting during today's event, so please feel free to join in the conversation at #EvolvingTravel. So now it's time to meet our speakers. And we're going to get everyone on camera right now. So first up, we have a little bit of a last-minute cast change. Kurt Weinsheimer from Sojourn had a family emergency late last night, so his very benevolent colleague, Chris Blaine, is pinch hitting for him. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Chris leads Sojourn's property solutions, inside sales, and account management teams. He brings more than 17 years of global experience in launching new businesses and high-performing teams and companies like Dell and Intuit, as well as a short stint leading the U.S. mobile advertising group for Punwear based in Newport Beach, California. Sojourn helps travel companies drive direct bookings by leveraging data that helps you find, engage, and convert travelers when they're actually planning their trip. Whether you want to drive awareness, generate new customer bookings, or re-engage those who've already shown interest, Sojourn helps you reach high-value travelers in every stage of the purchase cycle. Next, we have Ed St. Ange, president of Flip2, a marketing platform that lets your guests become advocates, turning trusted introductions to their friends and family worldwide into new guests. Ed first started out in the hospitality industry at 22, just a babe, and in his current role with Flip2, he's focused on helping hotels reach, inspire, and convert new guests through advocacy. Ed has been recognized by HSMAI Europe as a 2015 Top 20 Extraordinary Minds in Sales, Marketing, and Technology, and we're thrilled to have him here with us today. We also have Ellis Conley with us. Ellis leads the global sales strategy at TrustYou as Chief Revenue Officer. TrustYou is the world's largest guest feedback platform. From booking a hotel until after the guests checked out, TrustYou's products help hotels leverage guest feedback to impact the entire guest journey. Ellis is really passionate about the travel industry and technology, particularly how consumer sentiment drives purchase intent and can give hoteliers operational insights. Prior to TrustYou, Ellis led teams at Cvent and Aramark. He has a hospitality degree from the Culinary Institute of America, which I love that part of your resume, Ellis. Next up is Charlie Osmond. Charlie's the Chief Tease and co-founder of TripTease, a company that helps hotels increase direct bookings. The TripTease platform integrates with a hotel's website and booking engine, boosting performance and conversion rates. Before TripTease, Charlie co-founded 2 other successful companies, was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Esquire magazine. In his spare time, he also serves as a member of the British Airways Business Advisory Board, chairing a panel focused on data-led personalization. We also have David Chesler, Executive Vice President for Enterprise Sales and Business Development at SiteMinder. SiteMinder is a leading cloud platform for hotels, empowering hotels to attract, reach, and convert guests across the globe. SiteMinder's top products include the Channel Manager, the industry's leading online distribution platform, and the Booking Button, a wholly branded booking engine for direct bookings via the web. Over 22,000 hotels are using SiteMinder in more than 160 countries. David is strategically focused on SiteMinder's partner development, global account development, and new revenue opportunities. And last but not least, our very own Joey Egan, who is the VP of Marketing here at Leonardo. Leonardo provides technology solutions for hotels, B&Bs, vacation rental properties, hotel chains, and travel websites to help them leverage modern-day media to tell compelling, visually driven stories that engage, reach, and convert travel shoppers. One of our leading solutions is Visly, a multi-channel digital marketing system that helps hoteliers create and manage their website, mobile sites, Facebook apps, and digital brochures all in one place. Joey has over 10 years of experience in the industry, previously working for IHG. He joined Leonardo in 2005, managing key accounts with IHG, Hyatt, Carlson, Preferred Hotel Group, before becoming VP of Marketing in 2014. Welcome to all our guest speakers today. We're really thrilled to have you, and we look forward to the insights that you're going to share. So as we usually do during our traditional web events, we like to launch with polls, and we have 3 polls that we're going to kick off today's a little bit more about you. So the first poll we have is, where are you located? So choose the radio button that corresponds to where you're sitting, either North America, EMEA, being Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, or Latin America. So if you'd like to weigh in, just choose the geography that best corresponds to your location, and we will launch the results of that poll. So by and large, most folks are in North America, 60% in North America, followed by a little less than half in EMEA and Asia Pacific, and then Latin America. So thank you, everyone, for joining us from around the world. The next poll that we are going to launch is, we're really interested in which business sector you represent. Are you an accommodation provider? Are you an intermediary, like an OTA or an agency? Are you a tech provider, consultant, or professional service, or some other occupation, and you just happen to find yourself in a digital marketing summit for travel? So please weigh in, let us know which segment you represent, and that helps us sort of guide our discussion today, and so we know where you guys are coming from. So, and the results of this poll are, drum roll please, yay, 70% hoteliers, accommodation providers, which could mean a hotel, B&B, or vacation rental, followed by a tech provider, and then a consultant or professional services, an intermediary, and wow, intermediaries and other are about tied. So thank you for sharing that information with us. And then the last poll is, what stage of the travel shopping journey is the most challenging for you? So you can select all that apply, or if there's just one, go ahead and weigh in on that. Is it travel inspiration? Is it the next phase, which is research, planning, validation, booking, or travel sharing and engagement? And the results of that poll are, we'll share that with you once all the votes are tallied. This is also going to help, there we go. This will also help each of the speakers who are focused on the different phases understand, again, where the audience is coming from. So by and large, and I guess no surprise, right, booking, but also interestingly, followed closely by research, planning, and validation, and we're going to talk about all these phases today. So let's begin this summit with a quick look at the evolving travel shopping journey and why we made it the focus of today's discussion. When it comes to consumer browsing and purchasing behavior, this industry has one of the most complicated digital landscapes. Travelers have access to unlimited resources when researching destinations, hotels, and flights, which really makes gaining their attention challenging and more competitive than ever. A study published by Expedia breaks down the shopping journey actually into 3 phases: inspiration, mid-funnel, and then booking. And today what we're going to do is we're going to get a bit more granular, and we're going to break these phases down further into inspiration, research, planning, validation, booking, travel, and sharing. Each of these phases plays a very important role in the decision-making process and ultimately winning the booking, which is really what it's all about, right? So in the study that I mentioned, I want to highlight a key finding that is really pertinent to today's discussion. When clickstream data was analyzed for 29 million instances and 144 unique booking scenarios, what they found was that branded sites and OTAs have almost the same amount of influence during the inspiration phase. That is, travel shoppers consult both when deciding on a travel destination. And OTAs dominate this mid-funnel phase, the research, planning, and validation phase. That is that when travel shoppers are researching and comparing their options, it makes sense that OTAs would play a bigger role just because of the functionality that they provide. Namely, it's really easy to compare all options in one place. However, what's interesting is that, and that's the catalyst for today's discussion, is that hotels have over a 50% chance of securing that final booking, which is really encouraging. And the focus of today's summit is to help you understand the role each phase plays from the consumer's perspective and what they're looking for from you for accommodation, and how each of these phases impact your opportunity to secure that direct booking. Even if a traveler is in the early stages of the shopping journey, there are things that you can do that will influence them and move them down that booking path. Which brings me to our first presentation on travel inspiration. If you've just joined us, welcome. A reminder that you can submit your questions through this presentation using the questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel. And as I said earlier, we are going to tee up these questions during our first live Q&A segment, which will happen at about 12:20 Eastern Standard Time. In this first presentation, I'm going to be joined by Chris Blaine of Sojourn and Ed St. Ange from Flip2. Before we present Chris and Ed, I want to begin by taking a quick look in particular at the inspiration phase of the journey. During this phase, about a third of travelers haven't yet decided on a specific destination, or if they have, more than 80% of them haven't chosen an accommodation provider. So many travelers still have an open mind at this point about where they want to go and who they want to book with, and these are prime opportunities for you to make an impression. And people want brands to provide them with content that inspires and helps them narrow down their choices. In fact, more than 65% of travelers are more likely to book with a travel brand that provides useful and relevant information for the destinations that they're interested in. So where are travel shoppers going for this inspiration? According to Google, they rely on a mix of social media platforms, videos, photo sites, and search engines. In fact, in any given month, more than 100 million of YouTube's unique visitors are travelers, and 3 in 5 who watch online video do it to narrow down the brand, the destination, or their activity choices. And when using search engines, people often search for travel and inspiration based on geography or the type of trip that they want to take. For example, they'll type in honeymoon destinations or European destinations, and interestingly, 60% of these searches are done on mobile devices. So during the inspiration phase, it's super important to provide lots of visual content, but to optimize it for mobile. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris from Sojourn to kick off our presentation. And the first thing that we're going to do is welcome Chris. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Sojourn wanted to pick your brains a little more with starting out with a poll. And the first poll that we'd like to ask is, do you currently use programmatic advertising? And Chris, please jump in and add some color to this while the audience is weighing in. So you get to answer, yes, I do use it, no, I don't, or what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Very keen to hear how people are thinking about programmatic in today's sort of complex digital media world.
And let's see what the audience has said. Wow, so 25% say they do, 17% don't, and a lot of folks out there, I guess, want to understand what programmatic advertising is all about.
Great, yeah, we find that pretty typically to be the case, where programmatic is something that's super popular, obviously, in the display media world, but not well understood. So I'll do my best today to explain that to everybody.
Cool, great. Let's go to our next poll, which is, we'd like to know, are you an independent boutique, hotel, small chain? So I guess really the question is, are you just a small independent property, or you fall into a different category?
That's right.
So, yeah. So if everyone would like to weigh in, and we will share the results with the audience. Yes, wow. So almost 60% of you are from independents and small hotels. So thanks for sharing that with us. We appreciate it. And then the last poll that Chris wanted to launch is, do you work with a marketing agency? Yes or no? Pretty simple choice. So please let us know if that is something that you do, consult or hire a marketing agency to help you with your strategy. And if you could share the results with the audience. Okay, almost 50-50, Chris. So that gives us some insights into the makeup of our audience. So over to you for your first slide.
Great, thank you so much, Darlene. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody across the globe. I'm Chris Blaine, and I lead sales and account management for our Property Solutions group at Sojourn. So given the responses coming out of those surveys, I'm going to try and move through pieces of this conversation to make sure that I'm touching on where some of the key questions might reside. So I'll flip through some of the slides a little bit faster than others. So as we kick off here, and Darlene, I pressed the button to get the slide to move. I might need your help in getting the slides moving. Great. So really important, especially for all the independents and smaller hotels that are on, to realize that on any given night, 75 to 80% of the customers that are staying in your hotel are likely new guests. And so really going out and discovering how to reach new travelers that are interested in visiting your market or markets and bringing them to your hotel is critically important. Obviously, these numbers are slightly higher for some of our chain hotel partners, but it's super, super important to go identify new guests for the hotel. So here's another thing to understand. It's hard for travelers, right? On average, they're looking at 38 different sites when they're planning a trip, and they spend more time looking for a hotel than they do figuring out what flight they're going to get on. And when you poll them, 90%, almost 90% of them are just frustrated with the process. There's so much information, there's so many different destinations, there's so many different opportunities within those destinations, there's so much content, there's so much information. And so really cutting through that and reaching the right travelers with your message becomes critically important. So another interesting thing is that the journey is not linear. People don't say, hey, I want to go to Miami, or I want to go to London, right? And then they say, okay, now I'm going to research for that. And then, okay, now I'm going to purchase, and then I'll go, and then I'll tweet about it. In fact, people are tweeting about the next trip when they're on a current trip, or they're actually purchased a hotel, but they're still researching for other hotels that might be in that market. And so this journey is not linear at all. So it's really important to understand the points of engagement throughout this process. And obviously the end piece is really where the hotelier can really influence that experience at their property and drive that repeat guest. But these other areas are critically important to make sure that your message stays in front of those hoteliers on an ongoing basis. And to add additional complexity, enter mobile, right? So it's not just that they are searching on their laptop or their desktop computer, or they're just searching on their phone or their tablet. They are using multiple devices, and they're jumping between those devices. And sometimes they're using those devices at the same time to do two different tasks while they're doing their travel planning. So it's super, super important to understand that having an experience and way to reach customers across multiple devices be a real critical part of your strategy. Yeah, and then, of course, there's the various ways that people are using mobile. And interesting, the thing that's changing today is that historically you found across not just travel, but many different verticals and industries that the mobile device has been a very strong research device, but often not a strong purchase device. And in fact, that's changing. More and more people we're seeing are actually starting to make their purchasing decisions on their mobile devices. So again, we'll certainly talk later about sort of the mobile experience for your property, but critically important to understand the ability to reach and engage people across these devices. So you know all this. You know there's all these people out there on all these different devices using multiple devices. So how do I find that person, right? How do I find that a gentleman in the red shirt and the red cap who's the perfect customer for my hotel and is traveling to my market? So, interesting to know, many consumers aren't really brand committed, right? And it's also funny to know that, you get a shot here because they're not, right? Because they're purchasing from one company but searching other brands as well, right? And then certainly showing up in the mobile search results is really critically important as well, right? Because it drives better awareness and better engagement with their customers. And so, you can only win if you show up. So you kind of have to be ready for these new devices and these new search patterns, and make sure that you're planning your strategy against that. And I'll talk a little bit more about sort of having a more holistic, balanced approach to your media strategy to make sure you're reaching all these travelers. So traditionally, there's three key ways to reach travelers. The first one is sort of the classic search, depending on whatever search engine works within your market. People are going in and they're typing either destinations or specific properties or whatever, and they're gathering the search results through that. And that's a click-based environment generally. There's an ad that comes up, the customer clicks on it, and they drop into either your site or an OTA site or wherever they may go. The second are the OTA and metas, and of course we all know what the OTAs and metas are, right? Where they're using those sites to identify your property and either book on your property or just do more research on your property. And then the last and the probably less known opportunity for you to use would be display advertising, where you are promoting your property to individuals that have shown intent to travel, may have already visited your site, and you're trying to re-engage them and bring them back to your site. And that's where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time today. So let's get into that. So what is programmatic display advertising? I think it was 59%, something like 57%. Didn't know what programmatic was.
Right.
So programmatic is bidding on an impression in real time to show one specific ad to one customer in one specific context at the right time. Important to know that programmatic advertising is about a $22 billion industry, right? So it's really important to understand sort of how programmatic came into play. So let me talk a little bit about the history. So it used to be that you would identify a website that you want to advertise on. And you say, I'm looking for travelers, so I'm going to go advertise my property or my services on Yahoo Travel. Because my assumption is that people that are interested in traveling are going to Yahoo Travel, right? And you might have been right, you might not have been right, but you also really limited your inventory and you really limited your audience opportunity. What's changed, if you go to the next slide, is now you don't target the site, you target the traveler, wherever that traveler is on whatever site they're on, right? So they may be looking up cooking recipes. They might be reading their favorite news articles from CNN or one of the other sort of local news websites that might exist in your town or your area. They may even be on Facebook, right? What we try to do is we try to find the user wherever they are, right? And then we bid on the impression to capture that user while they're engaged with that web page. So that's fundamentally programmatic. I'm not looking for a website, I'm looking for an individual. And when I find that individual, I'm going to hit them right now with an relevant advertising that sort of matches against what we understand about that user. Now there's two components to programmatic and display advertising to consider. The first one is prospecting. And this one is less utilized than the other, which is retargeting. And retargeting, very simply, is just going and serving ads to people that have already visited your website. Really, really important. But more important, frankly, is the prospecting component. And the reason for that is, how do they know to visit your website if they're not aware of your website, right? So the prospecting piece is all about creating brand consideration and awareness, but certainly consideration. And then the retargeting component is, now that I've captured it and you've come to my site, how do I get you to come back to my site? So I'll talk a little bit about how this works here in some more detail. So what you do is you identify a user that appears to be interested or in the market for travel services or a destination, right? And you get that information from various third-party partners that we suck data in from. So as an example, an airline, right? We know people are searching for flights, again, using Miami, to Miami. So now I know there's somebody who has intent, right? I've captured that information. I've captured that individual's cookie information, so I know sort of that cookie person. And now what I'm looking for is, where is that person now on another website? Oh, I found them. They're on CNN right now. They're reading an article about, you know, the latest news around our election, which we won't get into the details behind that here on this call, hopefully. But so they're looking at these articles and reading these articles. We can bid on an impression right there, and we want that impression there because we know that person has just demonstrated interest to travel to Miami, so serve them a relevant advertisement for a hotel in Miami, right? Now, the individual hopefully has seen, looked at, right, and either clicked on or recognized that hotel, right, and now we've inspired them, and hopefully they're going to start engaging with your brand. Now, if we flip to the next slide, once they've now come to your site, right, they land, they shop, and they don't convert. And don't forget, only 2% of people that visit your site the first time are actually going to convert, right? So really important to know that, hey, I got them once, I got to get them back. They abandoned somewhere in the process, right? So now they're back out again on CNN reading another article, and now I'm going to hit them again. And in fact, I'm willing to spend even more to hit them again because they're that much more engaged, right, than they are on the prospect side. So again, you engage them with a relevant offer, come back, and again, drive that sort of consideration to come back to your website and book directly with your hotel. So that's
Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a question from an audience member, Jana.
Sure.
She wants to know, it seems like retargeting all of a sudden is everywhere. How long has it been around, and is that a real perception that it just sort of popped up in the last year or so?
No, definitely not in the last year or so, Darlene. And I don't know that I've got the detailed information on the history of retargeting. However, retargeting has been in place for many years. You know, I'd guess the last 10 plus years, but specifically with large retailers.
Yeah.
Right? So a big piece of, I worked for Dell for many, many years and ran their media. We went after people that abandoned our shopping cart with a computer that they were building, right? So we'd say, hey, that person just bounced, right? So how do I go find them again and say, hey, don't forget, you were just building this computer, come back to us. So that's been happening for quite a while. Again, I don't know exactly how long, but it started really aggressively in the retail environment, and now it has made its way into other verticals as well. You know, travel, again, is sort of another good example of that.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. So 40%, what does that mean? Well, what we found is that when we talk to hoteliers and we ask them, well, how are you measuring where customers are coming from to get to your website? The answer is 40% of them have no idea. They don't know where it's coming from, right? And so it's interesting, if you flip to the next slide, you start thinking about this idea of click versus view. And it's important to understand that only 2% of the population of people out there are actually clicking on ads, right? Most of them are viewing and engaging with ads, right, as they show up and as they sort of encounter them in their journey. But they're a very, very small portion of our clicking. A lot of people like to lean into clicking because it feels more measurable. But in fact, most of the media companies, and some of those hopefully that are here today, and even your agencies that you work with, at least half of you said you're working with agencies, they understand the value of attribution models, both from a view and from a click basis. So really important to understand, as you're figuring out your media spend, how much of that are you really focusing on the click versus how much am I doing to help influence more individuals out there through my view actions as well. So just really important to consider that as you're looking at your media mix. A couple of really quick things on smartphone. I'm going to move through these quickly because we've got other presentations today on mobile. But it's really, really important. And it's really important to understand that people are migrating off the desktop to their phone, and you need to have a strategy there. In fact, 65% of same-day reservations are made in the smartphone. So really thinking through your targeting strategy, certainly in real time, all the time on mobile phones, becomes really critically important because there's a lot of bookers and a lot of travelers making last-minute decisions, as we all know. So tips, quickly, apps. People aren't going to download an app for your individual hotel, so have a responsive design site, and Leonardo can tell you all about that. Make your offer boxes friendly, right? You're on a small device, it's not a website, right? Keep it tight, keep it small, right? Make sure that it's really easy to find, right, and easy to click. And then also make sure the quality of your responsive design site is such that it's loading quickly, because people, me included, if it doesn't load fast, I'll just swipe it and sort of move on to the next thing. So, just in summary, consumers have moved to multi-devices, right? And the purchase funnel that they go through today is super twisted, right? 38 different sites they're visiting, right? And 85 to 85% of the customers in most independent hotels every night are new to that hotel, right? So you've got people on multiple devices accessing multiple sites. How am I going to reach and engage those individuals, right, with a media strategy that's balanced across the OTAs and the meta sites, the search areas, and how I can reach people as they're browsing and surfing the web across multiple devices becomes really critically important. So, you know, we're finding great success in helping hoteliers really identify and target those users to help drive their digital presence online and reach those digital consumers.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. And clearly that topic is resonating with a lot of folks. We've had a ton of questions come in that will tee up at 12:20. So thanks for kicking this off for us and getting us on the right path. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ed, who's going to talk about reaching and inspiring travel shoppers through content. Over to you, Ed.
Great, thank you. All right. Let's see here. Make sure I have control of everything. So what I'm going to focus on for this section of the traveler journey is content marketing through stories. You know, fun little side note to this is it's the money tree that hotels have neglected to water. So content marketing through stories represents an opportunity for hotels to shift the odds of winning in the early phase of discovery into their favor. All they have to do is nurture, collect, and share the amazing stories that happen every day in and around their hotels. Because travelers in the inspiration phase, they're looking for an answer to why. Why should I choose this destination? Why do I want this experience? Why is one neighborhood better as a home base for my trip than another? And focusing on this early phase, it can be very impactful if you make your content useful to the consumer first and beneficial to you last. So this is not a phase to be heavy-handed with hard calls to action and tons of branding. Solid content marketing strategy is going to mix user-generated and professional content, so that way you can transform your marketing funnel and really get some great returns. So we'll kick off with a favorite quote of mine. So this is from Robert McKee, and he says, "By telling a story as a marketer, you're inserting like a Trojan horse, a story into a mind that loves stories. And now you've got a chance to get your audience to do what you need them to do." And the reason I really like this quote is it actually helps you visualize what good content marketing will do for you in this phase of travel. You want to win the hearts and minds of the person, and that's not done through Book Now and coupons. It's done by giving them compelling stories that speak to them, and it wins them over. So, let's see here, click. What is content marketing? It's the art of creating, curating, and distributing relevant content to attract and retain the targeted audience. It should build trust, loyalty, and engagement with your audience. And the key word on that is valuable. If someone can click that, I don't think I have control. There we go. So that's how this is different from advertising. The information should be something the traveler actually wants to find, consume, and share. It should help them learn something and become better travelers, and it should inspire them and be authentic. So what's an example of the difference between traditional form of content and story-based content? Let's take a look. So this is something I show quite a bit to hotels, and I like it as an example. So on the left is a random ad I found after I did a bunch of searching and started getting retargeted by hotels. And this is an ad. I scrubbed the hotel's logo from it, to save them. But if we look at this ad, it doesn't tell you much in the call to actions or reach based on what the ad does. And then on the right is actually something we mocked up for one of our customers using guest content as an ad. So, in this case, we're showing a real story of a guest with their real persona and their actual words and what they said. And the call to action is to see more stories. Performance-wise, the story-based ad does far better. And going back to what Sojourn was just talking about, where click is not the only measure, story-based ads will stick in a person's mind, more so than an ad that, quite honestly, this ad on the left, switch out the logo to any hotel that's in a mountainous region, and it's that hotel. And so going back to one of my favorite people, Robert McKee, the classic advertising technique that goes back to the Benjamin Franklin time of bragging and promising, that doesn't work anymore. People don't trust brands. People don't trust prepared content. So they want to see something authentic. But the good news is travel marketers are lucky because their product and service is a breeding ground for amazing stories. Adventure, love, touching moments happen dozens of times every day at every hotel. And yet it's rarely seen or leveraged in any phase of travel. Our point is hotels should not concede the battle of inspiration to the likes of TripAdvisor and Airbnb, who leverage this phase quite a bit. Expedia actually wrote a very interesting article on this whole content issue that exists with hotels, and they said it really well. Google has ruined many marketers by making them obsessed with content that drives search results, not content that serves the user. So what we're focused on is fixing that. Making it easy for hotels to tap their guests, to win relationships in the inspiration phase of travel. And, to show a couple examples of brands that have gotten this, let's go to the next slide. World Hotels recently completely overhauled their approach to marketing. Let's see. So much so that they shifted their entire experience to be centered around stories because they realized that winning in the inspiration phase was more cost effective and actually created true loyalty with a guest, not gamified loyalty through points. Another really nice example of professional content marketing is Wyndham Vacation Ownership. They hired a company called Percepture to build a substantial amount of content around traveling to the destinations and then built an entire website that is a landing space for that type of research. So, 8 perfect Memorial Day getaways, girls' weekends, things like that. The content itself that they distributed was completely devoid of their branding. And then even the site that they brought people back to was very much around understanding that people are trying to be inspired rather than being obsessed with Book Now.
Hey, Ed, here's a question from Sonia in the audience, and I think it's appropriate to talk about now. She wants to know, when using guest stories about their experience, do you need their permission to tell that story, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, you do. You actually need a really good release from the guest to be able to use their content and their persona and their story. I'm actually going to talk about that in the later part, talking about the key differentiation and how to be cautious if you're going to use hashtag as a vehicle to collect stories, and if you're going to use aggregators to collect content. It's, in a lot of cases, a legal gray area that hotels can avoid.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ed.
That's a great question too. Um, so let's talk about who else is really owning this space. So that company that hotels are constantly talking about and freaked out about, Airbnb, they grew on the idea of winning in the inspiration phase by leveraging stories and storytellers and the word of mouth marketing to just fuel their massive growth. Um, and some hotels are, really designing their strategy around stories. So if we go to the next slide, here's one of my favorite examples. We don't work with this hotel, but I love this hotel because of the way they've designed their experience. And their experience is designed to drive people who are in the inspiration phase to their site and have their site actually function. So when you look at this site, you learn a lot from the first glance. When you really break it down and analyze it, they make sure that there are pictures of people that represent all the different types of travelers. Our Stories is at the center of the Below the Fold. It's a very inspirational site, and through the visual elements of the site, you can quickly understand that this property is special. So let's talk about bringing true hospitality back to the forefront of your marketing strategy. Look at your website, your email, and your social with fresh eyes, and make sure you're infusing content that tells a story. Let's get off of relying on coupons as the way to get people to click things. Content is far superior and will get people to convert. So collect photos, videos, and real guest quotes and put those in front of people, because that's what people in this phase care about. They want to know the why and the what. And then, ask yourself, are you really selling the dream, or is it a checklist? So if within 2 clicks of your site, we're looking at that you have a hair dryer, a mini fridge, things like that, you're misunderstanding what your site is meant for. Instead, people should understand what's the experience that they're going to get staying with you. And then use appropriate calls to action in the inspiration phase. Book now is not one of them. Learn more. Get access to better content. That's how you capture people in this phase, and then you can nurture people who've never stayed with you into becoming future guests. And then, just like Sojourn said, you have to be mobile first. Most of the inspiration phase of the traveler's journey is done on mobile devices.
Great.
And
Thanks, Ed. Again, tons of questions coming in, and we'll be teeing up questions in a little bit. And I think the audience is really finding their way to the questions dialog box, so please keep those questions coming in. We'll pause here for just about 30 seconds before we start our next presentation, which will be with Charlie and Ellis. So our next presentation will begin in about 30 seconds. So you guys get a sip of water, and we'll be back shortly.